So, we gotta talk about Abba and Preach versus Fresh and Fit. Let me first start off by saying, isn't it cool that it's the duo YouTubers that are having a big old beef with each other? It's Abba and Preach versus Fresh and Fit. Isn't that cool? I think it's cool. Okay, fine. So, I've seen plenty of different takes and videos on this subject matter, so I find it tough to find a place to begin. So let's start from the beginning. So, if I understand correctly, Abba went on the Fresh and Fit podcast a couple times, actually, to my memory. And at one segment, they were talking about prostitution. And this is when they had Preach come in as a live stream guest. You know, he wasn't actually in Miami, he was live streaming with them. And then they were discussing prostitution. This was several months ago. Abba and Preach decided to revisit the topic because I guess it was brought back to their attention again. Now, Myron, being the insecure individual that he is, which you guys would have picked up on if you just watched the Fresh and Fit podcast twice, maybe 3 times to establish a pattern, felt that this was an attack, a little bit of a backstab, considering that they didn't really have all that bite or that criticism while they were there. They were revisiting the topic months ago. So Myron overreacts and decides to cook Abba and Preach. And then they have their whole spat back and forth. And then what happens is that Myron and Fresh, I don't really know his name, decide to say that they wish to have a boxing match, or they will box with Abba and Preach. And Preach, after hearing the insults of his wife, hearing the insults of his country, and having the chance of going to Miami, at that point in time anyway, decides to call their bluff. They, of course, back out and say, nah, we don't want to do this, or if we are going to do this, we're going to do this for, an exorbitant amount of money, thousands of dollars. Because why would seriously, who would pay a ticket to go watch 2 YouTubers fight? Like, okay, I get it, Logan Paul, but like, Logan Paul and his brother, they kind of have an established, they have like millions of dumbasses that follow them. Like, seriously, like, who's going to watch Fresh and Fit go box Preach? Like, really, I mean, it might be a live stream event. Maybe you can buy tickets to the live stream event, but it was ridiculous nonsense, at least to me. Anyhow, point being, they call their bluff. They decide, Fresh and Fit decide, you know what, man? I'm sorry to my audience. I'm sorry to you, the guys, the fans. We will not entertain this anymore. And then Fresh purchases a gun because I guess he's scared. I don't know. He's probably more lacking in self-awareness than it really is that he's genuinely scared that Preach is going to, like, pull up and go beat his ass. But, I mean, like, I don't know. So, like I said, I've seen plenty of takes on this. We also have to factor in the fact that at some point, Myron sent his fans after this young lady. She's a fitness CEO of her, Instagrammer, one or the other. He was trying to bring her to the podcast, and he would not allow her on the podcast unless, he got to clap her cheeks. He actually told about this stuff, but a little bit of a uncharitable retelling, and then sent his fans after her. Well, lots of people say he sent his fans. What he did, I mean, he kind of implied that it was fine to do, but he didn't really say go do it as much as he just said, hey, here's our Instagram handle. I don't care what you guys do with it. Which might just be a subtle way of it might be a bit of a 2-step where he could say, I didn't actually send them, I just targeted them in a direction. So after all of this stuff, and I would imagine that anyone who's finally made it to my video would have already gathered a lot of different information. I'm mostly making this video to give my opinion out to the individuals that were curious about what my opinion was. So let's start off with point number 1. Point number 1 is, I do find it particularly interesting that I find myself leaning mostly with the way Abba and Preach conducted themselves, despite the fact that I actually disagree with them on their original point. I actually don't think that prostitution is a totally fine, acceptable thing, and would love to make a video response to their points on that at some point in time. In fact, I saw a video where Abba was speaking to Kevin Samuels about escorting, and I think it would be a good video to respond to. I will certainly do that. But again, I find it interesting that I find myself in total agreement with Abba and Preach here, because they were right. Sometimes, as individuals, our minds wander and we focus on different things and we lose the plot. And something can be brought back to us as creators, and we think to ourselves, this might be an interesting thing to talk about again. And so we talk about it. Myron had a complete ridiculous overreaction, believing that this was some kind of drama stuff to be started, or maybe he thought it was a good idea to capitalize on it and make it a drama in order to booster his subscription base, but that backfired quite a bit, actually, judging by the way that even videos that are not related to the Fresh and Fit beef or the Fresh Alba and Preach beef are being downvoted to oblivion. I'm not really entirely sure what Myron's gain was here, if he was just being totally emotional, but I digress. The point is, Myron was being hilariously foolish. It's just entirely possible, as simply put, that Alba and Preach thought it was an interesting topic, and they had different thoughts now than they did before. Or they had an easier time presenting the thoughts they had now that they have time afterwards, time to refine themselves and think. There have been plenty of times where every human being has had a conversation with someone, and then later, maybe in the shower before you go to sleep, you think of some better, more refined points. That's all it was. Of course, Myron didn't see it that way, and thus we have, well, what we're talking about now. So, as far as talking about the whole boxing thing, which I've actually was kind of rather disappointed in Preach with this one, which might be a little bit of a hot take, but I'm not a big fan of entertainers boxing, because to me, boxing should be a competition that is mostly dedicated on a display of skill and ability with a very simple tool set. This is, of course, just me. I don't know if you guys probably don't care, but to me, I think boxing is a rather fascinating martial art due to the fact that you are so limited in only your upper body motion and your footwork. It's really simplistic, but what you do with those tools and how you apply them in this setting, to me, is what's really artful and masterful about the sport. Utilizing it as a way to just legally beat the dog shit out of someone, to me, kind of waters it down a little bit. Granted, I understand that a lot of entertainers that go and box certainly do still disrespect this art form in such a manner, and I can extend this to UFC fighters and all the nonsense they spew and crap out. I'm looking at you, Conor McGregor. I get it, and I understand, people like round emotions and beefs and that explosion, that catharsis. But to me, being an adult and understanding the amount of times I've almost engaged in hand-to-hand combat with someone, I find myself happy that I didn't, because I understand that fighting people is just not going to make the problem go away, and it's not going to make it better. In fact, all that happens is it just creates an opportunity for you to get hurt, and it just creates an opportunity for you to hurt somebody else. But in the end, what was said was said. The reason why Preach wanted to go and box Fresh and Fit is because they said mean things about his wife, because they said mean things about his country, and they said mean things about him. Well, we can just discount the mean things about yourself. I can understand why you would want to defend the honor of your wife. In fact, you should want to defend your wife against physical threats. People saying mean things about them is just mean words. We're adults. We have bigger, more important things to deal with. Flying to a different country to go fight somebody is ridiculous. Now again, it just so happened that Preach was going to be going to America. So it more was the stars aligned, quote unquote, not so much that he really planned for it. But the fact remains that the whole point that he was going to go out there and go fight them was to beat them because they said mean stuff to him on the internet. I'm going to be honest with you, I can't co-sign that. And the reason why I can't co-sign that is because people say mean stuff all the time. It's whatever. Combat, fighting people is too dangerous of something to do or enact in simply because someone said something mean. If you're going to engage in combat, it should probably more than anything else to either be a safe display of your skills with the referee or to protect somebody that needs help. Now, of course, a lot of people don't think of that. It's very shonen anime-esque, but honestly, I find it particularly interesting that there was an Alba and Preach video I really disagreed with when they were talking about how it isn't a good idea to go in and help people and protect people when they're in physical danger, and yet Preach is like, I'm gonna go box with a couple of niggas on the internet because they said mean stuff. You don't go out and actually protect people that need help. You go box people that you're probably might be stronger than, which he might be. He probably could whoop the nonsense out of Fresh, but I don't know about Myron. Myron's physical strength might give him a run for his money. That's assuming they were to actually engage in hand-to-hand combat. The point is, and again, it's not the worst or the most egregious point. I still find myself mostly agreeing with Abba and Preach. I say almost entirely. It's just that one thing, that one point bothers me greatly because, again, as an adult that has matured, and as an adult that's almost fought people over mean words, and not even just mean words, but I've almost fought people over hilarious amounts of disrespect. I can say with wisdom and hindsight, it's a really good idea that I didn't do it. And I think it's a better idea that these guys didn't do it either. Granted, it does certainly make Myron and Fresh look like some bitch-ass niggas, but again, it's internet stuff. I don't care about any of that. I think what's really important about the whole Myron and FreshandFit thing is the the exposing that Myron is a little bit of a hypocrite due to the fact that he has a seeking arrangements accounts where he leverages his success to have sex with women. And I find it interesting that there was this whole expose with this one chick. For the life of me, can't remember her name, but I will remember it when I upload this video. The whole expose thing, I find particularly interesting that it took this for people to recognize the clear and obvious truth of FreshandFit. Because let's be honest, guys, do you really think that Myron and Fresh suffer the presence of any of those Instagram girls that they put on their show and they don't have sex with them or don't try? You think that she's the only one? Dear viewer, please, people that commented upon this, let's utilize just an inkling or a tiny bit of our common sense. This isn't, of course he was doing this. Now the thing that makes this particularly interesting is, which I find interesting that no one really commented upon this, was how he went about doing it. How he went about doing it is almost cartoonish. It's almost a bit of a caricature. It's almost like he wasn't really even being human, or honestly, he's a little bit more being a little bit autistic about it. I probably don't mean to misuse that word, but it was a little bit autistic. Simply saying that you are actually, I'll let her tell the tale in case you guys didn't see it.
Collab. And he said, no problem, I collab directly with girls I date, no pressure though. And I was like, so if we aren't dating, you don't want to collab? Because he's never even asked me on a date at this point. So I was like, he said, no, don't mean to be an a-hole, but we have plenty of women in Miami. And I said, well, same, we have plenty of men here in California, so why would I fly to Miami to date someone who I know nothing about? And he said, simple, attractive women are common, high value men are not.
Which is just bizarre. No, normal humans don't really talk like that. But again, completely removing the fact that Myron is a caricature, which we'll have to jump back onto in just a second, excuse me, and specifically focusing on the fact that he does this, again, I find it interesting that it took this whole hoopla for you guys to finally realize that. Like, of course he's... Guys, brothers, sisters, come on, of course. Now here's the thing. Is it wrong? It's wrong. Okay, listen, here's the thing. I am, as one would say, there's a bit of a moral fag. I believe in principle and integrity and doing right and being well to people. And I understand that it makes me sound like an anime character, but I do. And what I think would be clear to anyone here that's privy to my channel is, obviously prostituting women is not a good thing. But guys, why do you think I've been criticizing the red pill lately? It's because I've come to terms with the fact that the ultimate destiny, the grand design of the red pill fantasy, is this revengeful nonsense. People are commenting upon Myron's high levels of emotions. And I just sit here like, Myron's always been like that. Again, if you've just watched all of 3 episodes of the FreshandFit podcast, all it takes is just a little bit of a pinprick to get Myron to act defensive against some of these ladies. Of course, if we were to do a very basic armchair psychoanalysis of Myron, it is very obvious to me that he and Fresh are just two people that are stuck in their high school mentality, and that they're living out the revenge fantasy against all of the pretty girls that didn't give them a chance when they were younger. In fact, that's kind of a lot of what the red pill is, unfortunately, now. It started off with people just saying the truth about the world and kind of morphed into a little bit of this odd revenge fantasy where men try to get back at women later in life after they've obtained resources. And Myron fits this perfectly. Again, listen to the way that he tried to court the model. It was canned chat, textbook, I'm a high-valued male, you're a regular woman. You should be with me because that's what the rules say. That's what the rules say. It's just, but that's what the red pill has just kind of devolved into, unfortunately. And a lot of those inklings have been there for a long time. But it's men who oftentimes were not, dare I would say, a la fuckboys by design, as in they were just born handsome and just never grew to respect women because dating women was always easy for them. But it's mostly men that are self-made and became this way. And so they always have a grudge against women because women besmirched them and mistreated them. Now that they're popular, now that they can leverage their power against these females, they do not use it righteously because, and I'm going to have to start saying this ad nauseum as well, if you do anything from a position of weakness, all that's going to happen is leave your heart black and cold. It's obvious why Myron acts like this, and I find it interesting that it took this with Abba and Preach before people started talking about it. Now, of course, if you'd been on my channel for quite some time, you would have known that I had made snippets and inklings at the fact that I was going to talk about FreshandFit at some point. And I really meant to. It's just that, I've been busy, and then I did the other videos. But I also kind of wanted to talk about them more with a better understanding of their psychology as well. And I think I can say with certainty that it's just they're a bunch of high schoolers in grown men's bodies. And I find it particularly interesting, again, that it took all of this hoopla before people finally started addressing them. Because I don't understand why no one started addressing them prior to this. I don't understand why our lady friend didn't. Well, our lady friend did expose him quite some time. Myron exposed himself. But I do find it interesting that, it's taken all of this before we finally come to the realization that Myron is a little bit of a hypocrite and is not a righteous person. Now, I've seen lots of people comment upon this, and I find it... let me rephrase that. I've seen lots of people comment about this, and I don't really like ever regurgitating points that other people have made. I always want to try to say something fresh or something different, a different perspective or a point that a lot of people I didn't see addressed very often. And one of those things that I kind of wanted to highlight actually isn't even so much about Ava and Preach and FreshandFit battling against each other, but more so people's coming out of it. It's more so, I've seen numerous takes on people talking about masculinity and being a man and acting emotional. Of course, them saying that FreshandFit are the weak men because they capitulated and acted emotionally, and Ava and Preach are the strong men because but they also acted emotionally too, huh? Well, I think the reason why they're the strong men is because I got it. It's because they acted with integrity. Kind of. Okay, here's the thing. Alma and Preach didn't need to prove themselves or do anything different except be who they were. So, in comparison to a bunch of charlatans, in comparison to a bunch of people who are hypocrites, it does indeed make Alma and Preach look spectacularly better. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think I can co-sign with anyone saying that this was a grand display of masculinity in any way, shape, or form. Again, if you guys think that Myron was messed up for acting emotionally and saying a bunch of mean words about Preach's wife and country, then Preach acting emotionally and deciding that he was going to go fight the two of them in a boxing match, I don't think in earnest, you can respect, because that is still an emotional response. He didn't have to fight him, and if he thought logically about the situation with the cool hand, he could have just said, say whatever you want. It doesn't change the fact that you are both a snake, you don't adhere to what you say to, and you're misleading people. That probably should have been the entire focus of that. But it wasn't. Preach also acted emotionally. I understand that this might again be a little bit of a hot take, but I don't think that this is how men should conduct themselves across the board. Abba, on the other hand, is usually pretty level-headed and usually pretty refined. And I think that he more than anything else, especially with him talking about maintaining his integrity and trying to do his best to treat people well and be righteous, is certainly good and very powerful, and I appreciate that. But again, I cannot co-sign with anyone believing that Preach is displaying a strong sense of masculinity by attempting to just go fight people and hurt them because he's mad. And that sounds a bit like a reduction, but that is what it comes down to if you think logically. It's because his feelings were hurt. Sorry to put it in such a manner, but that's how it was. Why did Myron react in such a manner? Because his feelings were hurt. And again, I think the thing about being a man is one of kind of understanding where your power lies and where your responsibilities lie as well. And if you do think that you are a stronger individual, then it's not your job to go out and hurt people. It's your job to go out and protect people. If you are strong, there's nothing to be gained by hurting those who are weaker than you. And if Preach was thinking that Myron and Fresh were weaker than him, then engaging in a fight, no matter how righteous it might be due to the fact that he was the one that was attacked personally by hurt words, should not be a model of masculinity that we men should try to model after. That being said, I do think that one thing is hilariously clear, or at least should have been clear. I guess is not clear because, the woman's walk rules over our minds, bodies, and souls as males, is that obviously the path that Myron and Fresh have taken also is probably even worse for the wearer. Granted, I've criticized Preach rather scathingly to some people here, but make no mistake, do not forget the last 5 minutes of this video. I'm still mostly on Preach's side, okay? So don't be confused with my commentary on Preach. I do think that it's good that some people, I guess, are finally saying that this is the path, but I just think that it probably shouldn't have taken up on Preach talking about them and having this nonsense before people started doing this. Because the problem is, if no one actually really applies this information, if no one actually really thinks critically or thinks hard, if this really is just a passing facade or passing fade, FreshandFit might be cooked. They might be done. Or they'll retain whatever loyal fan base that they had. Who knows? Maybe they'll bounce back. Who knows? But the point is, if no one ever really actually stops and thinks about this path that was beset, if no one actually stops and really thinks critically about what Myron was doing, leveraging his success in order to get the loins of females, if no one ever actually walks away with thinking that this is a poor form of masculinity beyond just this Twitter feed or this, I'm saying Twitter feed, usually outbursts beefs have on Twitter, this YouTube beef, then honestly, we're not any better than what we were the day before. And that's the thing that really concerns me about this kind of passing phase. Because while we can talk about the one chick that was propositioned by Myron, there's plenty of others that are going to be propositioned constantly all over the world. The system still exists. The system is still there. And unless we actually start tackling the system of prostitution and prostituting women and having women be in this position, I know I sound like a simp, then nothing's going to really get better. FreshandFit might be gone, but you're still going to have men who are trying to aspire to be like FreshandFit and live this revenge fantasy. And I think that should be the point of the fact that should be highlighted. The weak character that these men display isn't shown in the fact that they're highly emotional. everyone's emotional at some point in time. And honestly, I understand that's kind of a weak trait of being a human. I don't really think that should particularly be focused on like weak masculinity now that I think about it. But that's not the problem with Myron. I mean, it is a problem, but it's not the ultimate problem with Myron. The ultimate problem with Myron is Myron didn't learn something that I'm sure you guys are going to get really annoyed with me saying, but I'm going to say it until I die. Myron didn't learn that with great power comes great responsibility. Myron didn't learn that because now he's in a better position, he should treat everyone better. That includes the women that probably hurt his feelings. Myron may say that he wants to help men level up and grow up and be better, but that's all still probably just a bunch of lip service in order to make him feel better about the fact that he's acting in a position of weakness. That position of weakness being his hurt feelings. And of course I say Myron, but I'm including Fresh in there as well. I don't know Fresh's actual name, and I don't really care either. The point is, Alba and Preach, mostly, in my humble opinion, did well. He did okay. I don't think Preach intending on fighting was good, but he was fighting to protect his wife, even if it were for mean words. I'll give it a little bit of a pass. I don't really think that combat for mean words is worth it, but But in the end, I kind of hope that you guys start seeing the cracks of the red pill philosophy, the cracks of living for revenge, the cracks of trying to relive or have a better life from the past, living in the past and just carrying it with you. Again, if you guys should leave anything when it comes to this beef, including the expose of the young model lady here, what you guys should grasp from this, my friends, is to not be a man like Myron, and to aspire to be better, and inspire to be humble. And also, you probably shouldn't be incredibly emotional either. So with that being said, I assume hope you guys got something out of today's video. You probably didn't, but if you did, man, go ahead and click the like button. Shoot, go and click that one. Pow! Subscribe button. Comment in the comments below, and as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.